Hey guys, I'm so out of habit. This will be another Calcium video, so strap in. We're gonna look at some useless facts. Useless facts. Seriously? Wait, you don't have anything else to do today? Okay, we're fine. That should be fairly easy to manage. Let me just get my setup ready. Set up the pop mic. Should probably dust off my computer too. Let me just boot up Vegas real quick. This will be fun. Did you know the loot bag in the tutorial, which contains the minor death ring, is actually a unique loot container with the item ID tutorial loot bag, differentiating itself from the normal loot bag like so? Go ahead and tell that to your friends. Before the Nexus was introduced, you would spawn directly into the realm, meaning that if you were to escape certain death, you would have to tab out or close the game. For the lack thereof, the tutorial would be the social gathering space, a then public location. By typing /tutorial in the chat, you would summon a portal at your location directly to the tutorial, but of course this was abused to heaven. When it was about time for a Nexus to be introduced, a vote was cast for which name to pick. It was between Forgotten Temple, Lobby, and Nexus. Guess which one it became. You will not believe this. The very first Nexus would be made available the 22nd October 2010. This is the first image to be released from RotMG testing. And what's interesting about this image is not only the lack of 3D objects, the wizard's weapon, which he clearly stole from the priest. No, the interesting thing about this image isn't even encapsulated in the image itself. It's the character's movements, and they are funky to say the least. In front of you is an accurate depiction of build 77. Wait, something's up with these controls. Let me check. A and S. Backwards and forwards, okay? We can agree on that. And A and D is surely... Wait, you rotate on A and D. What do you use Q and E for? Strafing? Yes, that's how it works. And I can't say I'm not intrigued by this. I say Deca should reinstate these controls next April Fools. It would create mayhem, chaos, and destruction in the realms. Players dying left and right, discords being burned to the ground, Oryx's minions would roam free in the realm, and eventually, the Nexus in every corner left of humanity would be overtaken, infiltrated, before the Void Entity rises and reaffirms its dominion, and even seizes the power of Oryx. Just for one day of these controls. I can only dream. As of build 7, the drop rate of the magic mushroom is 0.5%. Snake oil used to drop in the undead lair, and Septavius used to drop wisdom and vitality. Some dungeon names really didn't have the punch worthy of a realm game, and so they were changed. This would be the case with the Parasite Chambers, previously named Parasite Den in 2012, and the Oryx Chambers, previously named Oryx Lair, which... Excuse me? Sorry for just barging in on myself. I'm afraid that Oryx Lair was never a thing. It's always been named Oryx Chambers, but the term Oryx Lair was coined by the community as slang, and so I allow myself for this instance to be corrected, because every previous mention of Oryx Lair is apparently a mistake, although definitely official slang. But as a sorry for this unforgivable sin I've committed, here's a bonus fact. Oryx the Mad God once used to be named Mad God Oryx. Interesting, isn't it? Have you ever wondered why this display glitch keeps happening, where you have 0 fame and 0 gold? Well, we've been wondering too, and we came to the conclusion that it is, lousy networking. Oh my god, what's this video doing to me? The answers are getting useless too. If you're an old Flash gamer like me, you'd probably notice this display glitch. In case you forgot, this loot bag in the corner reminds you of ongoing offers. And it would also remind you of when this offer would end, but sometimes it would go into negative. What? This happens because the database stores offers with a beginning and an ending date. And so, if an expiration date on an offer is surpassed, it would go into the negatives. When writing XML for enemy behavior, it may be necessary to name the so-called states of a behavior, if it's a little more complex, like you'd see with an enemy boss. If you look into the naming of these, developers like to have a bit of fun sometimes. Start the Fun was the state for when Septavius was activated. Pet Help was the state for when Stheno the Snake Queen spawned her pets. When Arachna the Spider Queen is activated, she enters the state Set Web to throw the cobweb. Afterwards, she enters the state Eat Flies, suiting as she now goes to collect the heroes who might have been slowed by the cobweb. And my favorite, Size Matters, when Malphas the Archdemon grows big. We don't have any confirmation of how many of these states the developers kept, but I'm pretty sure they kept the Size Matters state. And it's even from the Wild Shadow days. What a tribute. The oldest accounts in all of RotMG of course belong to Rob Schillingsberg and Alex Carabas, the founders of RotMG. We can assume these accounts to be at least 11 years old, if not wiped or deleted. But in case you're more interested in the oldest accounts still active, RotMG has an interesting list, though still a bit inaccurate. Even so, thought-provoking that 3 people have accounts 10.5 years old while still being relatively active. This post you see in front of you was the first ever public announcement of RotMG. This was the official participation for RotMG in the TIG source assembly competition. Nowadays, enemy behaviors are server-sided, meaning that all XML and data for enemy behavior is stored purely on the server, meaning that prod code is not accessible to any of us. But back in the day, the stuff was client-sided, meaning that you could just decompile a prod client, look into it, and find all sorts of specs for enemies. Looking at the example in front of us, we see both values for range, movement, and speed. Try looking at the Hobbit Mage RotMG page. You'll see some funky values under behavior. Funny thing is, you can't really use any of these values. I mean, you don't have any frame of understanding of how many tiles a chase range of 6 is. These values would be made unavailable at about the same time that drop rates became private. Late 2012, I'd say. If you followed along in the Realm Classic Mysteries video series, you might have seen that a lot of old enemies have been reintroduced in recent months. For instance, Feral, these Midland enemies, and the Sting Spider. We know Feral from High-Tech Terra, but originally Feral was supposed to be an event boss spawning with a set piece in the realm. It would then be the only source for Matlabs. And the Sting Spider, now dropping the Crawling Depths, were supposed to drop the Spider Den. If you've ever stopped to look in the game sprite sheets to see if there was anything odd in there, you may have encountered some of these images. A message for Nigel, whatever this is, and surely the famous drawings of Spryfox co-creators Daniel Cook and David Edery. If you know of the scrapped enemy Willem's head, this is a reference to the developer Willem, pretty much alike I'd say. Back in the day, quests used to be purple on the minimap. What you see in front of you is the first concept art for Dreadstump the Pirate King. A bit sad that didn't go with his Build-A-Bear look. Originally, character design for the knight didn't include a shield, and for the priest it included a tome. And since there was no shield, the dye would apply to the knight this way. Aesthetically pleasing? I don't know, perhaps? This screenshot shows how scepters once looked. All 5 of these entities are scrapped NPCs. Only the guy in the middle, the Nexus Crier, was remade as Gil. The first time the community showed interest in a bot class was all the way back on the Wild Shadow forums. What you see in front of you is concept art from back then. This alternate version of the wine cellar has existed in prod. Not gonna lie, I could see this return somehow. The first player to ever purchase anything in the Nexus shop was Letnam. As can be seen, Wild Shadow announced this in public fashion. Paladins used to have tomes. This looks so cursed. As can be seen here, another rank system existed back in the day. What we might come to recognize as attack spells nowadays once had the ability of healing and was supposed to be used by the priest. This is from 2010, so the UI might look a bit odd. The keys looked a bit different. Potions of vitality and wisdom were once named Potion of Health Regeneration and Potion of Magic Regeneration. I mean, it's easier to understand, but it's not that fancy, is it? You may know this as the Oryx Char sprite sheet. For one thing, when the hallucination debuff on your character is applied, this is where the game gets its sprites from. But this was also part of the sprite pack released in the TIG Souls assembly competition. And so if you look to the top, you can see a list of heroes, heroines, and humanoids. If you know of this ability, the Striker Amulet, this was supposed to be equipped in the ability slot of the Ranger class. This class perhaps being what we see in the top right corner of the sprite sheet. Noopir and I have also been speculating about these gloves. Perhaps they were another concept for an unknown character. Another class the community suggested would be the Gunslinger, which effectively was a modded warrior. We don't have any representation of how this would have looked, but the Oryx Char sprite sheet definitely offers its ideas. And just as an FYI, the Summoner class has existed for quite some time too. Deca is currently in the midst of reintroducing and reusing old concepts from the Wild Shadow and Kabam era. So who knows, perhaps we might see some of the stuff I've talked about in the future. Sometimes a different point of view can be rewarding, and that was something Old Realm also allowed you to. F2 would get you into cinematic mode, F3 would get you into something called screenshot slim mode, and F4 would hide chat bubbles and quest displays. I hope this video helped you learn something new, and if it didn't, consider it a nice bit of nostalgia. Most of my information and expertise lie within the past, and so that's why this video ended up fixated around that. If you're still not satisfied or there's something you'd like me to clear up, you can leave a comment, and you know what? I'd be glad to include your useless facts. We have a description for that, but please, just judge accordingly. I know, everything can be useless. You spawn on the beach. I know that. Something that will blow the mind of the ones reading it. That's what I'm searching for. Until then, farewell, it's been a blast.